All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors. Thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Iyar. Stephen Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Shuman Joshua's this month in honor of their newest grandson, Matan Shmuel Aharon. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, this young man will grow to be an incredible and successful Ben Torah Me'av Esm Shanim Tovos. But with that, today's daf is Mem Beis 42, and an incredible daf it is. We are picking up on Mem Aleph Mem Beis 41b, and we are picking up 10 lines up from the bottom. So if you remember again, at the end of yesterday's daf, we got into the sugya of Chanufa. Or Chanufa, flattery, and the Gemara talking about the deleterious effects of Chanufa, and how again Chanufa ultimately again condemns an individual to all types of punishments, which we'll get into in just a moment. So the Gemara says, "Faus Amar Rabbi Lazar, Kol Adam Sheish Bo Chanufa, maybe Afli Olam." Any person who goes ahead and brings and literally has flattery in him is also by the way, an interesting lashon of sheyesh bo chanufa, has flattery in him. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Maybe afli olam brings anger to the world, which Rabbi say means invites the midas hadin, the divine attribute of justice, into the world. Shneimar v'chan filev yasimu af v'lo od elashem tfilas nishmas. Any person who has chanufa, who has flattery in him, his tfilos are not heard. They're not listened to. Shnei Amar Lo Yishavu Ki Yasiram. I'll say just a little bit of background to this. What is it that's so bad about Chanufa? I understand flattery is not good. I certainly understand that. But Lamaisa, why the intensity, right? Why the intensity? Ultimately, again from Chazal about this. Because remember again, what does Chanufa represent? Chanufa represents the height of personalistic insincerity. Right? When a person has the need of chanufa, when a person is just a flatterer, so what ends up happening? They're not sincere. They're not genuine. They're not truthful. And suddenly what comes out is anything they say is always subject to what? Is always subject to like, all right, really? Like, do you mean it? Do you not mean it? Is it just in order to get something? So I would say that's the problem with Chanufa. A total insincerity, a total sense of lack of genuinity. I know it's not a word, but I like it, right? Genuinity. I will say, so what's the problem? What's the most important midah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs from us in this world? The most important midah is honesty and sincerity. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not ask me to be perfect. He doesn't even ask me to be great. What he just asks of me is to be honest. Because if I'm an honest and sincere person, then when I mess up, which I do multiple times every hour, right? Then ultimately, again, at least I have the chance, I have the ability to go ahead and fix it. But if a person lacks sincerity, a person lacks genuinity, then at the end of the day, there's absolutely no hope for such an individual. That's why you see the strong response to Chanufa. If you possess Chanufa, your tfilos are not heard. You possess Chanufa, ultimately, again, you're bringing anger to the world because it's the antithesis. It's the antithesis of the honesty, the sincerity, the genuinity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs from us in order to be successful people in this world. Incredible. The Gemara goes right there. From Elazar. Any person who possesses Chanufa, this is pretty wild. Even fetuses, right? Even fetuses in their mother's womb curse such an individual. Shnei Amar, Omer l'Rosh Tzadikata, Yikavu Amim Yizamu le'umim, Vein Kol v'Alaklala, Shnei Amar v'lo Kavoel, Vein la'om ela ubim Shnei Amar u'la'om mil'om yematz. Okay, so that's the whole Rosh on the Psukim. We'll say, what's the pshat? That even fetuses curse such an individual? We'll say, when a person has the need of Chanufa, this is actually, and we know this from the world, a person has the need of Chanufa, so what happens? Everyone could sense it. Right? I will say, have you ever been around insincere, disingenuous, flattering type of people? Right? What's your feeling as soon as they open their mouth? What's your feeling? It's a lot. Come on. It's so clear. So I'll say the whole chap is when a person possesses the need of Chanufa, everyone could sense it. That's what the Gemara means when it says, "Afilu ubim shemei," even the fetuses. Okay, it's not literal, right? But even the fetuses. In other words, that lack of sincerity is palpable, and lack of sincerity is perceived and picked up and understood by everyone around you. Remember, Lazar, any person who has Chanufa ultimately again falls into Gehenna. Goes to Gehenna. Again, Rabbi say it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. What is it? What is it? It's a consequence. It's a consequence. You possess chanufa, you're not sincere, you're not honest, you're not genuine. Okay, so that means you're not going to fix your mistakes. You don't fix your mistakes in life. There's only one destination for such a person like that. Shneimar, ha'omrim l'ra tov v'la tov ra maksi v'achrov lochein kachol kash loshon ish v'chashash lahavi yirpeh. Aram v'lazar kalamachnu v'chavero, anyone who flatters his friend, sof nofel biyado. Interesting what I say. See, generally, the reason you flatter someone is why? You want to manipulate the individual. You try to manipulate someone, what generally ends up happening? Generally ends up happening is you fall into the hands of that individual who you tried to manipulate. A reversal. If you remain on nofel biyado, and if you don't fall into that person's hands, nofel biyad banov, you fall into the hands of his children. If you remain nofel biyad banov, if you don't fall into the hands of his children, nofel biyad b'nei bano, ben bano, you fall into the hands of his grandchildren. The idea is when you try to manipulate someone through flattery, at the end of the day it won't work. And not only will it not work, but there'll be a reversal. Ultimately, again, you'll fall to that individual. If not him, his son. If not his son, his grandson. Shneimar. Rabbi said the source for this is actually quite interesting. Vayomer Yirmiyah lechananya, Amen kiyase Hashem, yakam Hashem es tevarecha. So I will say this, without getting into the entirety of this story, ultimately, actually take a look at Rashi. Vayomer Yirmiyah lechananya navi, she'amar nevuas sheker al galos yichanya, uklei mikdash shegalu imobio od shnasayim yamim ani meshivim el hamakom hazeh. So there was this guy Hananya, and Hananya was a false prophet. And one of the false prophecies that Hananya espoused is that Yechanya, who was the king of Yehuda, was already exiled, and Hananya prophesied that Yechanya is going to be returned to Yerushalayim very soon, along with some of the utensils of Beis HaMikdash. Yirmiyahu heard this. They will say Yirmiyahu knew it was false. How did Yirmiyahu know it was false? Because he was a Navi, and he did prophesize about destruction. But yet when Hananya said this, what did he say? He said, Amen, Kein Ya'aseh Hashem. So Yirmiyahu said, Amen. I will say, now the Gemara understands that was a form of Chanufa. Right? Yirmiyahu was flattering Hananya. So because Yirmiyahu disengaged in the behavior of Chanufa, so what happened? Uksiv, top of Membeis, top 542a, first line, Vayhiu b'shar binyamin, b'sham bal pekidos, ushmo, Yirya ben Shamya, ben Chananya, vayitpos es Yirmiyahu hanavi leimar, elakastim ata nofel. So Rabbi will say, so fast forward a little bit. So again, Yirmiyahu later on is arrested by a guy by the name of Shamya ben Chananya. Yirya ben Shamya ben Chananya. The grandson of this guy Chananya goes ahead and arrests Yirmiyahu Hanavi. And he makes a claim that Yirmiyahu was a traitor trying to aid the Kasdim. So Vayomer lo Yirmiyahu Sheker and Nofel ala Kasdim. Yirmiyahu says no. We'll say, what's the point of here? Ksiv Vayith post Yirmiyahu Vayevi'eu el Asarim. He's arrested. Yirmiyahu's arrested. Who is he arrested by? By the grandson of the guy who he flattered. So this is just the raya that when you employ flattery as an attempt to go ahead and manipulate someone, it backfires. You're trying to get that person to do what you want. Meanwhile, ultimately, somewhere down the road, either now or in 2 generations from now, you will fall into the hands of this individual. Again, I will say, it's all the same motif that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just wants us to be sincere, honest, and genuine people. And the midah of Chanufa, flattery, is the antithesis of that. So when you go ahead and you act with a midah that is the antithesis of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us, nothing works out. Incredible. So I'll say this is actually an incredible Gemara. Any Eidah, and I will say, so now what we're doing is we're switching from the individual to the collective. Any time an Eidah, a congregation, right? So I will say a congregation could mean Klal Yisrael, or it could mean any group of people possess this terrible midah of Chanufa. Mu'usa kanida. I will say now, Mu'usa literally means disgusting, like a nida. So we're going to say it doesn't mean disgusting. Nida is not disgusting, chas v'sholom. Right? So again, mu'us, we're going to see the definition in just a moment. Shnei amar, ki adas chanaf galmud, shekim b'krachei hayam korin l'nida galmuda. Right? So we'll say often, in foreign lands, they call the nida a galmuda. My galmuda, gimula mi baila. Someone who is removed from her husband. So also what it means is like this. In the same way that the nida is removed from her husband, an Eda, a congregation that possesses, or a group that possesses the need of Chanufa, is removed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, what's the enormity of that statement? See, normally we make a distinction between the individual and the collective. And sometimes the individual could do things which remove its bond, which removes his bond, or which fractures the bond between himself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We always operate under the assumption that there is a general divine providence, siyata d'shmaya, that devolves upon the collective, tzibor. Right? That's why tefillah b'tzibor, right? Davening with a minyan is so powerful, because my prayers have greater impact when they're part of a collective than when they're just done individually. What the Gemara is highlighting over here is that the midah of Chanufa is so corrosive and so destructive that it even damages the relationship of the collective to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only does it damage the relationship of the individual, but it damages the relationships of the collective to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I will say, it makes sense, because if Chanufa represents again a lack of sincerity, a lack of honesty, a lack of genuinity, which is the core midah or midos that allow us to forge a relationship with Hashem. If chas v'shalom, the tzibor has this, it even fractures their relationship. Incredible. Rabbi Loza says, Kol eidah sheish b'chanufa l'sof kola. Any congregation or any group within Klal Yisrael that has chanufa, at the end of the day will be exiled. Ksiv hacha ki adas chanav galmud ksiv hasam ve'amarta bilvavecha miyalad li es'ela v'ani shekula v'galmuda gola v'sura. Incredible. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar. What's another interesting Gemara? Arba kitos emekablim pnei shchina. But it is a profound statement. There are four groups of people who, literally translated, do not receive the face, or do not receive the countenance of the Shekhinah. And Rabbi said, this can mean one of two things. This can mean, what does it mean? They don't receive the Pnei Shekhinah. It could either be a reference to Olam Haba, right, world to come, that there are four groups of people, ultimately, again, that really don't have a portion in the world to come. Or again, it could kind of reference back to what we were just saying before, four groups of people who engage in four different types of behavior, who ultimately fracture their relationship with Hashem, even in Olam Hazeh, even in this world. But the idea is, Pnei Shechina is a relationship statement, right? It's not, in other words, it's not a punishment. It is a punishment, but it's more a consequence. They don't have a relationship with Hashem. Be a reference either again in the world to come or here. Who are these individuals? Kat Leitzim. People say this is incredible. A group of Leitzim. People say, what's Kat Leitzim? So we saw some in Silas Yisharim, right? This idea of Leitzonos, right? What's a Letz? Someone who just doesn't take anything seriously, right? Everything is mocked. Everything is a joke. Everything is cynical, sarcastic. There's always something to say about everything. So that's a Letz. So I'll say, if nothing is treated seriously, you accomplish nothing in life. So Kat Leitzim. Next, Kat Chanifim. Here's the connection, right? A group of flatterers, right? Flattery. Kat Shkarim. Liars. And Kat Misapri Lashon Hara. Those who speak Lashon Hara. So I will say, these four groups are not Nekabel Pnei Shechina. I will say, if you think about it, each of these things by themselves really represents. So I will say, right? The Let's, he takes nothing seriously. Well, if you take nothing seriously, you're not going to grow in life. You're not going to grow in life. You're not a growth-oriented person. Well, you don't have a relationship with Hashem. Right? Chanifim, Chanufa, we just spoke about before, lack sincerity, honesty, genuinity. Then there's no hope for personalistic development. Shkarim, Sheker. Once again, I will say, so far the common denominator between these first three is honesty. Honesty and integrity. If you're not an honest person, you're not going to own your mistakes. You're not going to own your mistakes. At the end of the day, again, no hope for growth. And Kat Misapri Lashon Hara. So I will say, This one, it kind of stands alone on its own. What's the whole chap of Lashon Hara? Lashon Hara erodes the interpersonal fabric of society. If you're not a person who is careful with his bin adam l'chavero, you're not a person ultimately, again, who is careful with his interpersonal relationships, you have nothing. You have nothing to build on. So I'll say, so again, where do we see this? The Gemara goes through this. Kat leitzim d'chsiv, mashach yado es lotitzim, kat chanifim, d'chsiv, kilo lefanav chanav yavo, kat shkarim d'chsiv, dover shkarim, lo yikon l'neged einai, kat mesaber lashon hara d'chsiv, kilo kel chafetz rasha ata, lo yigur chara, tzadik ato Hashem, lo yigur gur chara. So I'll say these are the 4 psukim that ultimately highlight this idea that these 4 groups are not mekabel pnei Hashem. I was thinking about it when I was looking at this Gemara last night. It's interesting. If you are writing this Gemara, how would you write it? Why does it have to say kat, groups? Right? Why doesn't it just say, I don't remember arba anoshim, right? Arba b'nei adam, einon mekablin pnei Hashchina. Right? What? Right? 4 people who engage in these 4 behaviors, or arba midos shebnei adam. Why kat? Why groups? So I will say, maybe the pshat is like this. See, sometimes when a person commits an avera, so I will say, the greatest possibility to enable their tshuva is surrounding myself with good people. Right? Tov, right? Tov l'tzadik, tov l'shchino. And this is such an important yesod in life. Why it's always good to have friends who are on a higher level than you. Right? Always good. Surround yourself with people who are really good influences. Because this way, even when I mess up, which I will, when I know that I have a good friend support group around me, positive guys, good people, good influences, growth-oriented individuals, see, even when I'm low, Emeretz Hashem, they will lift me up. And I will say, on the other hand, that's the hope of tshuva. On the other hand, if I go ahead and I surround myself with negative people, or I surround myself with people who are not the right kind of influence, so what ends up happening? When I'm down, I just sink lower because I have no peer group to lift me up. So perhaps what the Gemara is talking about over here is, who are the people, or what's the situations we're not mekabel pnei Shechina? It's not just a person who speaks Lashon Hara, or a person who's a letz, or a person who's a liar, or a person who's a flatterer. Rather, what is it? It's kat. Let's say a group. See, the danger is not just when I'm a letz, but what? I'm part of kat leitzim. Not just when I go ahead and I have chanufa, I'm part of kat chanifim. Because now suddenly, not only do I go ahead and possess this negative midah, but what? I'm surrounding myself with people who behave in the same way. Well, if I'm surrounding myself with people who behave in the same way, I will say, then it's really a problem. Now I'm never going to get out. That's why he says, you look at that statement, Ein mekablos pnei Shechina. What a doomed statement. What a doomed statement. Such a person, right, is not going to ever be mekabel pnei Shechina. Well, the truth is, if I'm struggling and I surround myself with people who are struggling just as much as I'm struggling, chances are none of us are getting out of this, because there's no positive peer pressure to elevate. So we'll say it's a twofold statement. It's a statement about the nature of the destructive nature of these behaviors. To be a letz, to be a liar, to be a chanufa, to be a mesapra lashon hara. Terrible, corrosive. But what's even worse? To surround yourself with people who have the same midah, we'll say, then there's a real danger that I'm going to get stuck in a pit from which I will never extricate myself. The power of surrounding yourself with positive people, and chas v'shalom, the reverse, the destructive nature of surrounding yourself with destructive people. An incredible yisod. We'll say, Hadron aloch elu ne'emarin, mazel tov. New parak. We'll say, this is great. It's great. Mashoach b'chama. We'll say, remember, just to understand, the way we're getting into a lot of these topics over here is because these were all mentioned. And they were mentioned in the context, ultimately, again, remember again, we had Mishnayos that said, Elu ne'emarin b'lashon hakodesh, elu ne'emarin b'cholosh. We spoke about things that could be said in any language, or things that dafka need to be said in lashon hakodesh in Hebrew. So we're picking up on that. Mashiach Milchama. And we'll say we're going to who is the Mashiach Milchama? He is the Kohen who was anointed. His specific job is to lead the army out into war. Now, when I say lead the army out into war, he's not a military leader, but he is like the chaplain, right? He is the Kohen whose specific job it is to give the army instructions and chizuk before they go out to war. So what happens? Mashiach Milchama b'shah shemedaber ela'am b'lashon hakodesh ha'imedaber. When he would speak to the nation, right, he would speak in Hebrew. Because when you will come close to war, we'll see exactly what that drasha is. V'nigash hakohen, the kohen will come close to the army, right? So v'nigash, the kohen will come to the front. This refers to the kohen who is anointed for battle. Anointed for battle. V'dibra ala'am, he will speak to the nation. B'lashon hakodesh. In Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh. Va'amar aleim, what does he say to them? Shema Yisrael. Again, we'll see the meaning in all of this. He says to them, Shema Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Al oivechem v'lo al achechem. He says, Shema Yisrael. Ultimately, again, the rest of the pasuk will say, Va'amar aleim, Shema Yisrael, atem krevim hayom le'milchama, al oivechem. You're going out to battle against your enemies. Now, the implicit question that the Gemara is asking is, obviously, you're going out to battle against. Who else are you going out to battle? Right? Who else are you going to war against? To which the Gemara says, "Aloivechem v'lo alachechem." Just understand, you're going out to war against your brothers. Sorry, against Chashem. You're going out to war against your enemies, and not against your brothers. Now, what does that mean? Lo Yehuda al Shimon v'lo Shimon al Binyamin. Right? We'll say there were periods of time of civil war within Klal Yisrael. This is not a civil war, the Kohen Mashiach Milchama. It's not a civil war. You're not going out brother against brother. Because what happens when you go out to war against brother? Shim tiplu biyadam yirachmu aleichem. They both say, this is going to sound strange. What's the good thing about civil war? What's the good thing about civil war? The thing about civil war is you can pretty much count on brotherly compassion. Right? At the end of the day, if you fall captive into the hands of your brother, he is going to treat you compassionately. Shneimar, vayakumu ha'anosh masher nikvu b'shemos, vayachaziku b'shivya, v'chol ma'amareim hilbishu min ha'shalal, v'yabishu v'yan'ilim v'yachilim v'yashkum, v'yaskum v'yan'ilim v'chamorim, v'chol koshal, v'yavim yiricho, irat marim, eitz alachem, v'yashuvu shomron. So we'll say, listen to this. So Rashi points out over here, this was during the war of Pekach ben Rimalyo, who ultimately again fought against Achaz. So this was Yehuda against Yisrael, where ultimately again there were a number of men from Yehuda who were captured. And what happened to the captives from Yehuda? They were fed, they were washed, they were dressed, and ultimately again they were returned home. That's what happens in Klal Yisrael when brother fights against brother. So the Kohen says, just understand, you're not going to war against your brothers. Rather, al oivechem atahochem. You're going to war against enemies. And what happens when you go to war against enemies? Shem tiplu biyadam emirachan aleim. If you fall captive, they will not have compassion upon you. So I'll say, so again, that's the first thing the Kohen says. Kohen Mashiach Milchama says, understand, you're going out to battle, not against your brother, but against your enemies. Be prepared to fight. Because at the end of the day, if you are captured, there will be no mercy. There will be no compassion. Ayirach levavchem, literally again, don't let your heart be soft. Al tiru, don't be afraid. Al tachbezu, don't panic. So the Gemara says, I will say this, so there's many different lashonos that the Kohen Mashiach Milchama employs to tell the soldiers not to be fearful. Ayirach levavchem, don't allow your heart to be soft. Nipnei salas hasusim. Ultimately, again, because of the braying or the neighing, whatever the right term is, right? Because of the sounds of the horses, right? You hear the cavalry there, it can be very overwhelming. Don't be afraid. Vitzichtzuach charabos, or the clanking of the sword. Al tiro mipnei hagafas trisin. Don't be afraid because of the banging of the shields. So I'll say sometimes again, when the armies were poised to go out to war, what would happen? They would bang on their shields. They would bang on their shields as an effort to intimidate the other army. V'shafaz hakal gasin, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, ultimately again, of the sounds of the groups of soldiers. Atach bezu mikol kranos. Don't be nervous when you hear the horns sounded. V'al ta'artzu mipnei kol tzavachos. And don't be broken as a result, ultimately, again, of the cries of the opposing army. See, I will say, what's incredible about this is, whenever you tell someone not to do something, by definition, what are you essentially saying? I recognize that this is normal. So it's actually an incredible idea. What the Kohen Mashiach Milchama is doing is, he's also validating the fact that war is scary. He's validating the fact it's understandable to be scared, but now I'm telling you, don't be scared. Don't be scared. I understand why you might be fearful. Don't be scared. Why? What's the second wide line? Ki Hashem Elokechem haolech imachem. This is so beautiful. Why shouldn't you be scared? Why shouldn't you be scared? Because understand, you are not going out to war alone. You are going out to war with the Ribono Shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu walks with you. Your enemies, they come out to battle, they come out to war with successes of human warriors. But you come armed with the successes of a Ribono Shalom. Plishtim ba b'nitzchon shel Goliath, the Philistines came, armed with the victories of Goliath, of Goliath. Mahaya Sotah, what happened to Goliath? The Sof nafal b'cherev v'nafal amo, right, v'nafal imo. V'nafal amo. Right, Goliath himself is felled by the sword, and his nation alongside him. B'nei Ammon ba b'nitzchon shel Shovach. The sons of Ammon, they come out armed with the Shovach was their warrior, right? Mahaya Sofo, the Sof Nafal B'cher V'Nafal Ammon, right? So again, same thing with Ammon. Their champion fell, and the nation fell as well. V'yatem, Iyatem kim, but you, Klal Yisrael, you're not like this. Ki Hashem Elokechem haolech imachem, lilachem lachem. But you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes out to battle with you. He's going to wage your battles. Zeh Machane Aron. What this refers to is the Aron. Well, we'll see actually what the Gemara means, but this refers to the Aron, or the camp of the Aron, which came out to Klal Yisrael with war. We'll discuss exactly what that means. So it says the Gemara, my Kamar. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that the Kohen Mashiach Milchama would utter his instructions in Lashon HaKodesh, would utter his instructions ultimately again in Hebrew. So it says the Gemara, my Kamar, Shene'emar v'diber. Pasuk says the Kohen would talk. V'ne'emar la'alon Moshe yidaber v'elakim yanenu b'kol. By Har Sinai, ma'ala halon b'lashon HaKodesh. Just like by Har Sinai, everything was said b'lashon HaKodesh. Afkan b'lashon HaKodesh. So too over here we said b'lashon HaKodesh as well. Incredible. Tan Rabbanon. V'nigash HaKohen v'diber ala'am. So Pasuk says the Kohen will come close and he will speak to the nation. Yochol kol Kohen she'yirtzeh. You might have thought any Kohen who wants to could go ahead and give chizik to the army. Talmud Lomer v'dibru ha'shotrim. The Pasuk says the officers will speak ma'shotrim b'memuna, just like the shotr, an officer is appointed position. Af Kohen b'memuna. So too again it has to be a Kohen who is appointed for this particular job. Ve'ema Kohen Gadol. Maybe it's the Kohen Gadol who does it. To which the Gemara says, Dumya the shoter. Has to be similar to a shoter. Right? Why? Mas shoter sheshemuna al gabav. Just like a shoter has a superior above him. Af Kohen sheshemuna. So to a Kohen who has a superior. But the Kohen Gadol, right? So the Gemara, Kohen Gadol doesn't have a superior. Yes, the Kohen Gadol does. Because the Kohen Gadol namya ika melech. The Kohen Gadol reports to the king, right? The king, right on the organizational flow chart, the king is above the Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol does have a superior, to which the Gemara says, "Avodah what it means in his avodah." The Kohen Gadol doesn't have a superior in his avodah. He's the top guy in the avodah of the kahuna. So therefore, you need a Kohen. So in other words, we'll say, because remember, in the same pasuk, there are two people who lead two groups of people, called two people, so to speak. One person and a group who lead the army out into battle. There's the Kohen and there are the Shotrim. So the Gemara is saying we have to equate the two positions. So just like the Shoter is appointed, the Kohen has to be appointed. Just like the Shoter reports to someone, the Kohen the Kohen has to report to someone as well. The Skan, maybe it's the assistant Kohen Gadol. Both say this is incredible. Skan lav memunahu. Both say this is actually quite fascinating. The Skan is not an appointed. Remember the Skan. Who's the Skan? Who's the Skan? Now we call him the assistant Kohen Gadol, but the truth is he's not really the assistant Kohen Gadol, right? What is he? He's the bullpen Kohen Gadol, right? He's the bench Kohen Gadol. I just want to point out, this is actually very important because this is the point that's being brought out over here. See, assistant Kohen Gadol sounds like what? He's working. He'll say, what is the Skan Kohen Gadol doing on a regular day, right? If the Kohen Gadol is happy and healthy, what is the Skan doing? I don't know, right? Golf, right? Golf, crossroad, right? He's on the Harabayis, right? He's on the 7th hole of the Harabayis. I don't know what he's doing. Right? In other words, whatever he's doing, he's learning, he's doing mitzvahs, right? He's doing chesed. He's not doing anything in the Beis HaMikdash, right? Because remember, he is only activated when something happens to the Kohen Gadol himself, right? So we call him the assistant, but the truth is, he's not really the assistant. He's on the bench. The replacement. To which the Gemara says, Skan lav mamuna. Skan is not really an appointed position. The Sanya, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Skan HaKohanim, Lama Skan mamuna, right? Or right for the maskan. What is the Skan appointed for? Shem'ira bo psul b'kohen gadol nichnas u'meshamish tachtav. See, I will say, the Skan is not really an active position. The Skan is only there in the event that something happens. He springs into action. So I will say, this is actually fascinating. That I will say, so therefore, to kind of close out the circuit, therefore the Gemara says, the Kohen who goes out to war is a specifically appointed position. Right? It can't be the Kohen Gadol because the Kohen Gadol is the highest level. Right? It can't be the Skan because the Skan is not really an appointed position. I will say, Sini Karabah Musar Haskell. What's the Musar Haskell? The Musar Haskell is standing ready to do something, but not actually doing anything, is not a position of prominence. I will say, in other words, talking about what you're going to do, or planning what you're going to do, but not actually doing it, is not really considered to be a position of importance within Klal Yisrael. And I will say, that's the metaphor for life. Many of us spend an incredible amount of time planning and talking and articulating and espousing what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. Only one problem, which is we never fully execute. Well, if I can't fully execute, then at the end of the day, that's nice. Maybe one day I'll be important, but Lamaisa, right now when I'm on the bench, it's not all that important. Incredible yisod. So the Gemara goes weiter. V'amar aleim Shema Yisrael. So the Kohen Mashuach Muhammad says to them, he gives them a whole speech. Shema, right? The speech is Shema Yisrael. Listen, Israel. Atem kravim hayom Muhammad. Today we're going out to battle. So we'll say, so the Avi Yisrael is, why does he employ the lashon of Shema Yisrael? To which the Gemara says, why Maishna Shema Yisrael? Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishram B'Shimon Yochai. Rashi will say, what a schos. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is over here with us on the 34th day of the Omer, right? What one see is the beauty. Once you create a relationship with Rashbi on Lag BaOmer, that relationship stays with you even into Lad BaOmer. That's the beauty of the Tana Rashbi. So Rashbi says, Amar LaHakadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, Afilu lo kiyamtem el kriyas shema shachris va'arvis yatem nisram bi'adam. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, all you need in order to be successful in life are spiritual merits. Unless you think that you have to be, as they say, a greis tzaddik, you don't have to be so righteous. Even if all you come to war is armed with the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema, Shachris va'arvis. And I will say, then what? You'll be successful. And I will say, now if you notice, by the way, the Gemara doesn't say all you need is the schus of Kriyas Shema. Right? What does it say? You need Kriyas Shema when? Shachris and Arvis. See, I will say, what's the chap when you have Kriyas Shema, Shachris va'arvis? You've bookended your day with Ruchnius. See, I will say, if I just have episodic Ruchnius, then that's not enough. But if I have bookended Ruchnius, even if the middle of the day, right, even it's not so great. But if I'm starting with Kedusha, I'm starting with Shema, I'm ending with Shema, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that's great. That's a fantastic start. And therefore, the Ma'aseh, that's enough of a schos to allow you to be successful in battle. Ayerach levavchem al tiru. Don't be afraid. Tana Rabbanan. Supposed to listen to this. Pamayim medaber imam. The Kohen Mashuach Muhammad speaks with the army twice. Achas b'safar, or b'sfar. One time, we'll say, when we immediately leave Eretz Yisrael. So when the army goes out to battle, ultimately, again, so he speaks to us the first time when we leave the borders of Eretz Yisrael, the Achas b'Mochama, and literally the second time, literally on the front, right when we're actually about to go out to battle. This Safar Ma'u Omer, on the border, what does the Kohen Mashuach Mochama say? Amud Beis. Shimu dvarai me'archem melchama v'chizru. Right? Ultimately, again, hear my words, those going out to battle, v'chazru. Now, what does it mean, chazru? Anyone who is entitled to go back from battle, go back now. Go back now. Exemptions. Look at Rashi. Shimu dvarai me'archem melchama, mirai lachzar u'mirai leilech, v'chazru haru'im lachzar, kigom banabayis. We're going to talk about all this. Nata kerem, eras isha, yori v'rach halevav. So both say, this is actually very interesting. So the first speech is given at the borders of Eretz Yisrael. And it's there that he says, essentially, whoever is fit for battle come, but whoever has an exemption, go back home. So Rabbi say, by the way, what do you see? We're going to talk about this more. What do you see from this? What do you see from this? What do you see? Everyone goes out. Rabbi saying, you see what's fascinating is, I would have thought exemption, what does an exemption mean? What does exemption mean? Don't go at all. What do you see from here? No. Everybody goes. Everybody goes. Then when you get to the border of Eretz Yisrael, what happens? And he speaks about the exemptions of those who don't have to go out to battle. So we're going to talk about this more. I will say, but what's the logic? What's the logic? Everybody, I'll say the logic is that when Am Yisrael goes to war, everyone goes. Everyone goes. Now, not everyone fights. That's the chap. Not everyone fights. But if Klal Yisrael is going to war, there is no such thing as a Jewish man who is not packing his bags and going out with the army. You may not fight. You may be sent home because of a variety of different things. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, everyone's supposed to say, that's what it means to be part of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael is in danger. Am Yisrael is facing a threat. You're going to stay home and eat chalent? What are you talking about? Pack your bag. Pack your bag. Everyone knows when they see you schlepping along, there's no way, we're not sending that guy out. Right? Lamaisa, right? But Lamaisa, you should stay home and eat chalent, right? But Lamaisa, a little less chalent, right? But Lamaisa, everyone goes. I would say, it's just an incredible yesod in achdus, right? So when the army is called up, everyone goes everyone leaves Eretz Yisrael. At the border, we're going to send you back home. See what I will say? See what I'm saying? Achdus. You know what achdus is? Achdus is you are part of the klal, no matter what is occurring, even if at the end of the day, you don't have a specific way to help. In other words, you join the ranks. You join the ranks of Klal Yisrael. I'm here, I'm counted. Either going to send me home because of whatever different reason, that's fine. Maybe I'm going to get sent home. But I'm still going to join the ranks of Am Yisrael as they march towards battle. It's such an overwhelming idea. The Gemara goes weiter. So I'll say that's the first speech. So the first speech the Kohen Mashiach Muhammad gives is at the border of Eretz Yisrael, and where he says essentially the exemptions. What's the second speech? We'll say Mem Beis 42b second line. So then he tells them, don't be afraid. Because let's remember again, anyone who's present at the second speech, the front lines, who is that? That's the army that's going to fight. Right? So again, anyone who was going home was already exempted during the first speech and is already home. So the second speech is given to the standing army who is going out to battle. And what does he say to them? Don't be soft of heart. Don't be afraid. Don't panic. Don't be broken. This corresponds, we'll say, why 4 lashonos of chizuk, 4 expressions of chizuk, corresponding to 4 things that armies would often do to intimidate opposing armies. What would armies do? Magifin, umariyin, samchin v'romsin. So also, right, they would go ahead and clash, right? They would go ahead and hit their shields, they would blow their horns, they would cry out, and ultimately, again, robsin, they would stamp their feet, or have their horses stamp their hoofs. Plishtim ba'om and etzchon shaloy. So also now we're going to talk about, so remember again, the example the Mishnah gave is the Jewish army, we come armed with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our aggressors, our enemies, come with some human champion. So, for example, the Plishtim, the Philistines, they came with Goliath. What happened to Goliath? He was killed by David HaMelech. He wasn't even David HaMelech, he was just David. Right? So the Gemara says, Goliath, Amar B'Yochanan, Sha'amar B'Gilui Panim L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll say, why is he called Goliath? Goliath is the lashon of Gilui, right? Revelation. Literally, again, he was Megale Panim. We'll say Megale Panim is the lashon Rashi says of chutzpah. Right? Goliath was chutzpahdik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shene'emar, Baruch Lachem ish v'yireh delay. Goliath, remember again the story with Goliath. So remember, Goliath issues a challenge. Bless you. Goliath essentially says, we don't have to wage army against army with such a loss of life. I'll be the champion for the Plishtim. You Jews, you send out a champion. Let's just do one-on-one combat, and that's it. We'll call it a day. Whoever wins that one-on-one combat, that's the victor, and the other one goes home. He says, Baruch Lechem ish, choose a man and come fight me. Ve'in ish el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both say sometimes ish refers to Hashem. Shnei Amar, Hashem ish milchama. So the Gemara understands that Goliath was essentially extending a challenge to the Ribono Shel Olam. So he was saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, come fight me. Come fight me like a man, God. Right? I'll take you on. So Gemara said, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu mapilu al yad ben ish. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will cause Goliath to fall, not in the hands of an ish, but a son of man. Shnei Amar v'David ben ish Efrati. So I'll say, ultimately, how is David identified? Not even as an ish, but as a ben ish, the son of a man. I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Meir, B'shloshim Makamos, Lachto Piv La'os Rasha. Rabbi say there are three places where Goliath's mouth betrayed him. Rabbi say he said things that foreshadowed his own demise. Number one, Echad, Baruch Lachem Ish V'yered Elai. Let it right. Choose for yourself a man. V'yered Elai. Rabbi say now the lashon of V'yered Elai. Remember again, Aleph and Ayin can be interchangeable. So V'yered Elai could also mean V'yered Alai. Choose a man, ultimately again, V'yered, who will trample upon me, come upon, which is a reference to the fact that Goliath would lose. See, he didn't even realize it. He didn't realize it, I would say. That ultimately, again, he was foreshadowing his own demise. V'idach, im yuchal lehilachem iti, v'hikani. If someone is able to go ahead and do battle with me and smite me. V'idach. So again, he made reference to the fact that he would be killed. V'idach tika'amar leDavid, hakelev anochi, ki ata ba'elai b'maklos. Remember again, when David Melech comes out with his little slingshot, so Goliath taunts him and says, what am I, a dog, that you come out again with your sticks? Ultimately, again, a reference to the fact that he would be beaten like a dog with sticks. David nami amarle, ata ba'elai b'cherev, b'chanes b'kidon. But David Melech also used this same lashon. Hada amarle va'anochi ba'elecha b'shem Hashem tzavakos Elokei Yisrael, ma'archos Yisrael shecharafta. David Melech qualifies it ultimately again by saying, I don't just come out to you with sticks, but rather again, I come armed. I come armed as an emissary of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who you degraded. Alright, Vayagesh HaPlishti Ashkei V'harav. So listen to this. So the Navi says that Goliath would taunt the Jewish people every morning and evening. Early in the morning and in the evening. So I said, why early in the morning and in the evening? Am Rabbi Yochanan Kedei Levatlan Mikriya Shema Shachris V'Arvis. So I will say, what did Goliath want to do? Goliath Dafka wanted to interrupt Shachris and Ma'ariv, right? He wanted to interrupt Krishna. I will say now, by the way, if you notice, what did we just say before? When the Kohen gives his speech, what does he say? Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Why does he start Shema Yisrael? Because he says to the army, even if all you have are the zechuyos of Kriya Shema Shal Shachris, Kriya Shema Shal Arvis, that's enough to make you successful. When does Goliath knew his stuff? I will say, by the way, we're going to see how Goliath knew his stuff in just a moment. But Lamaisa, Goliath purposely taunted Klal Yisrael, purposely interrupted in the morning and in the evening, so as to undermine their recitation of Kriyat Shema of Shachris and Arvis, hoping to undermine the zechuyos of Klal Yisrael. Incredible. He went ahead and he taunted them for 40 days. Ultimately, again, this corresponded ultimately again to the 40 days in which we received Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu was up on the mountain for 40 days. So Goliath, you see all of this of Goliath trying to undermine the spirituality of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan, Keneged Arba'im Yom, good, it's fine. V'yetzi ish habeinayim mimachnos haplishtim. So what's very interesting? There was an ish habeinayim who emerged from the camp of the Plishtim. Now this is a reference to Goliath. My Binayim. Why does it call him Binayim? So Amarav Shemavuna Mikol Mum. He was built. We'll say Goliath was a perfect physical specimen. Right? Binayim means Mavuna Mikol Mum. He was built up. He didn't have any blemishes. Shemavuna Mikol Mum. He didn't have any blemishes. Shmuel Amar Beinoni Sheba'achav. He was kind of like the middle, like the Beinoni, like the average one amongst his brothers. In other words, he came from a very strong and valiant family, to the point that Goliath was the champion of the Plishtim. Just know he was kind of like the average one amongst his brothers. Rabbi Shmuel Amar Shu'asei Kebinyan. He was mamish like a building. Right? Goliath is like a building. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Bar Mea Papi V'chada Nanoi. He was the result of 100 stepfathers and ultimately one father. I'll say now we're going to see what this means is, at the end of the day, his mother was incredibly promiscuous, right? And slept with a lot of men. So who Goliath's father exactly wasn't abundantly clear. The Goliath Shmo Migat. His name was Goliath from Gat. Son of Yosef, Shakol Doshin es imo kigat. Everyone literally again had threshed his mother like a press. In other words, very promiscuous lady. By the way, I want to point out, this was a practice by the Plishtim. This was a practice by the Plishtim. They had this idea that if a woman slept with as many like valiant men as possible, thinking that the mixture of zera would produce like the ultimate warrior. So this wasn't, I just want to point out, she wasn't uniquely promiscuous. Perhaps she was like the top of the class, right? But Lamaisa, this was cultural practice amongst the Plishtim. So the Gemara says, we actually saw, if you remember again, we saw this a little bit earlier in Sotah, that the night before Shimshon was supposed to be executed. What was happening? The Plishti men were bringing their wives to try to become pregnant from Shimshon. So again, it wasn't even looked at as immorality. It was looked at ultimately again as, this is how you build a stronger nation. Find strong men, allow women to become pregnant from those men, and ultimately again have them become pregnant like that. So just pointing out, this was cultural. Ksiv ma'arachos. Everyone had relations with Goliath's mother. Ksiv harpa, uksiv arpa. Shabbos says, interestingly enough, what was her name? So it calls her again harpa, but it's written as arpa. Rabbi Shmuel Chadamar harpa shma. Some say the name of Goliath's mother was harpa. Valama nikra shma arfa. Why was her name called arpa? Shakal arfin osa me'achareha. So again, I will say again, another lashon over here of this. This is a reference to Bia Shaloki Darka. Vechad amar arpa shma valama nikra shma harfa shakal dashin osa karifos. Vechenu omer vatika chaisha v'tifos hamasa chapanei be'er vatishtach alea erifos. So I'll say, so again, all of this just pointing to the incredible immorality. Again, but we don't call it immorality. They didn't call it immorality. They just called it nation building. Right? But Lamaisa again, Vibai, say that possible, say second wide line, you're saying Behacha, Im Techakesh es ha'eva machtish, beso charifos be'eli. Ve'es arba'as ele yodu laharpa begat. So vayiplu biyad David biyad avada. So we'll say again, Harpa, or had 4 children, had 4 sons, and one of them is Goliath, who's the primary topic over here, and all 4 of them ultimately again fell in the hands of David and his servants. Maininu, we'll say who are the 4 sons of Harpa, right? Maininu, Amr of Chista, Saf, Madon, Goliath, V'yishpi Benov. We'll say Yishpi Benov is one name. This is Goliath and his brothers. Ultimately, again, we'll say they fell in the hands of David and the hands of his servants. This is incredible. Dichsiv, Vatishak Arpa Lechamosa, Verus Dav Kaba. I will say, I just want to point out something absolutely amazing. We're going to stop over here. We'll pick up with this tomorrow, Miras Hashem. But I will say, just to point out, Goliath is a descendant of Arpa, and David is a descendant of Rus. So if you remember again, the dramatic moment in the beginning of Megillas Rus, where Naomi has 2 daughters-in-law, Rus and Arpa, and ultimately Arpa goes away, Arpa kisses her mother-in-law, goes away, and Rus stays. So I just want to point out, that's the moment when Rus and Arpa, their paths split. I will say, but Rus and Arpa, their paths once again collide. Where do their paths collide? When their respective grandsons meet on the battlefield. Right? David and Goliath, the grandsons. David, the grandson of Rus. Goliath, the grandson of Arpa, meet again. I will say just the last line. The Gemara says, Avatishak Arpa lechamosav Rus tav kaba Amar Yitzchak Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yavo b'nei hanashuka V'yiplu b'nei hadavuka. Let the sons of the one who kissed, i.e. the sons of Arpa, ultimately fall into the hands of the Dvuka, the hands into the one who cleaved to Naomi. In Torah, we'll stop over for today. We'll pick up at Meretz Hashem with this narrative tomorrow. Incredibly dramatic. Shrecha wasai. All right, Chevron, have a great day. Good to see everyone.